Welcome to the Pepper Fox Podcast, where we believe that nothing will empower individuals and strengthen humanity more than theater and film. Throughout this podcast, we will be sharing our favorite tips for actors, headshot expertise, and ways we live a creative lifestyle. Tune in for interviews with actors living their dreams and creatives dedicated to enriching their own communities. I'm your host, Bre Welch, actor, headshot photographer, mommy, and lover of Dr. Pepper. Let's do this. Hello, Dallyn.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Well, like everybody else,
Yes.
this COVID-19 thing, it's been crazy, but
It really has.
yeah.
You facilitated a whole move.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. So it's we've had to. Well, when I was in New York and when this thing hit, I was right in the middle of audition season, and yeah, because they closed everything down. My family was actually out here in Utah, and so I was living out there myself, just staying with some friends during the audition season. So we actually hadn't moved out there. I just had moved all my stuff out there. But anyway, yeah, once this hit and the audition season shut down, I just moved back. So and
Oh, it's so crazy.
yeah, it's been really crazy. The arts community is they've taken a huge hit. It's just really, really sad. And
They really have. It really has affected everyone. Like anyone that I can think of, like any celebrity even, I just go, wow, they're sitting at home right now.
yeah,
That's crazy.
yeah, everybody. It's affected everybody, and yeah, and it's sad. It'll be interesting to see how Broadway and the performing arts communities around the world really can bounce back from this. I hope they do, and I hope it comes out better somehow. But I don't know.
I hope so too. Yeah. Okay, Dallyn, I want to know, where did you even get started in performing? Where did it all begin?
You know, I love this question because it makes you think back on your life and how your journey started, you know, and I think it's really good to do that sometimes because it helps to kind of illuminate the many wonderful people and experiences that have helped to shape and guide you in your life and made you the person you are today. And it just, I don't know, it just feels you sort of full of gratitude. And I have a very different story, I think, than most. I actually grew up in a small town of Green River, Utah. And that's where it all started. Now, Green River is not a thriving metropolis of theater and music. You know, it's a little town of about 800 people, kind of a farming community, but we do get a lot of tourism through because I live near Arches and Canyonlands National Parks, and we're right on Interstate 70. But it's a very small town. And it's interesting because like more than once, I've heard people when they hear where I'm from, they'll kind of flip that biblical passage and they'll ask me, "Well, can any good thing come out of Green River?" And I say, "Well, if you think me good, then I guess so." but anyway, but yeah. So my third grade musical. That's where it started. I did a third grade musical. Miss Anderson directed it. It was called Dragon Tales, and I played the role of Sir Brian the Brave. Now it was not a leading role, but it was like a kind of a, I don't know, supporting lead. And I actually had a death scene in this musical. I went on stage with a burnt cape and I fell over. And it was awesome because I went to go face the dragon, you know? So that's where I kind of got my first taste of it. But it really kind of started when I met the high school music and drama teacher when I was in 5th grade. Her name was Jessica Jenkins. Still a very close friend and dear person to me.
Yeah.
But, you know, in that small town of no culture, she introduced music and drama and musicals to me. And her influence really actually kind of started for me when I was in 5th grade because she would come down to the elementary and she would actually start an elementary band. And so I started playing the cornet and then I moved to the baritone horn. And anyway, this kind of continued through junior high. The junior high and the high school were in the same building. We actually had one in that small town. Total of 100 people, grades 7 through 12, if you can kind of imagine that. But
that's insane.
It is.
So small.
Yeah, my graduating class was like 12 people, and so it was small, you know. but I continued band there, and then while I was in junior high, you could work backstage for the high school musicals, but you couldn't audition yet. And so I was just working backstage, and I loved watching the musicals. I started getting to know them. And then it was also kind of during this time, I remember my sister, my older sister Holly, and my parents went down to Los Angeles to see the Phantom of the Opera when they had the permanent production down there at the Amundsen Theater, and I was incredibly jealous. And I didn't even know why, because I wasn't really totally invested in musical theater at that point. But I just like, oh, I really wanted to see it. And they're like, oh, you would have thought it was boring. It was just this opera, and people singing the whole time, and it would have been totally boring. But I don't know. I was jealous, probably just because it was my older sister. But but I anyway, it just these things just started to build something in me about what theater was. Then when I actually got into high school, of course, I started to do the drama and Shakespeare competitions. I did the high school musical each year. Of course, we had drama class, and under the guidance of this music and drama teacher, Miss Jessica Jenkins, she just introduced musicals and dance and music to me, and I just fell in love. But the I think the most important experience I had was when I was in ninth grade. Miss J took a group of us from school one Saturday to go see the Saturday matinee of Les Miserables. It had
Oh, wow.
it had toured to Capitol Theater, and it was funny. Just preceding this, she would get on the school's PA and she would read little sections of a long synopsis of the story of Les Miserables to kind of build up the I don't know, the excitement.
Yeah.
We were going to go. And anyway, it was the first professional theatrical production that I had ever seen. I mean, of course, I had listened to the music and knew a little bit of the story, but I went and saw it, and it was a major turning point in my life. I not only was the show itself just impressive, with the story and the acting and the singing, and it moved me, but the what was interesting to me is that I was wanting to do what they were doing for me. You know what I mean? I wanted to be on that stage to share a story in a way, using music and acting to be able to touch people's hearts and lives the way that they were doing it for me. I had this very distinct thought that I wanted to do that.
Yeah.
That it went beyond just the story that was being presented and how it affected me, to me wanting to tell those kind of stories. And it was really transformational for me, and I actually thought about it for several hours after the show was over. It was really profound effect on me. Um, anyway, and so I wanted to start to get involved in theater, and I had no idea. I just saw these actors on stage. I knew that you could make a career out of it, obviously, because they were doing it. So I was like, I guess you can do that. So I want to do that.
Totally.
And so I was like, okay. And you have to remember, I mean, I'm pretty naive. I have no idea what Broadway's like or what it takes to make a career out of this. I just knew I wanted to do it. And so anyway, I took advantage of every opportunity I could from that point. That summer, actually, I came up here to the thriving metropolis of Orem, Utah.
Yes.
I stayed with my grandparents that summer, and it was kind of funny because my dad wanted me to kind of pursue more athletic things, and so he actually got me hooked up with a teacher that kind of weightlifted with me and taught me basketball. But at the same time, I somehow got involved in a musical in Lehigh of Fiddler on the Roof, and I played Mendel. So anyway, I was doing Fiddler on the Roof and working out and playing basketball. It was a lot of fun.
All over the place. I love it.
Yeah. And then I decided to do this again my junior year because I found out about this youth theater workshop that they did up here through the CIRA here in Orem. And they were doing a production. They were going to do something else, I think, but then they changed it to Wizard of Oz. So anyway, I did Wizard of Oz, and I played the Scarecrow. and I got to be able to work with some local talent here, and they were just amazing, and I developed some lifelong friendships with a lot of people there that I still know and work with today. And it was really cool. And then of course, 12th grade, I'm all thinking, okay, if I want to pursue this, I got to find a program that can help me get to where I want to go. And I found out I had thought about going to BYU anyway, and thought, well, what do they have with musical theater? And I learned about the music dance theater program. So I decided to audition. And it was kind of funny because when my uncles heard about this, they're big BYU alums, and they came over and told me, it's like, now they were trying to ease me into rejection. They were trying to say, now don't expect too much. There's a lot of really talented people that come to that school, and so you shouldn't be thinking this may work out, is kind of what they were saying. And,
oh my gosh.
And so I was like, okay, whatever, and again, thanks to my naivete, I just like, I don't know. I just what I can do, and so I'll go and just do it. Anyway, I went there and I did my best, but looking back, I failed miserably. Oh my gosh. The singing audition, I sang an aria. I sang Nessun Dorma, no less.
Yes.
Okay.
They're like, who's this guy?
Without any real formal singing lesson in my life, I went and sang that. And needless to say, it didn't go extremely well. I did okay, but not extremely well. For the dance audition, I wore penny loafers because I didn't know about dance shoes. I had no idea. They just said soft-soled shoes, and I was like, oh, well, maybe I'll use my Sunday shoes.
They're pretty soft.
And they kept falling off my feet, so that was bad. And I had never had a dance audition in my life. I had no idea what to expect. And then for the acting portion, I found something in a monologue book, as I hadn't really read very many plays at that point. And anyway, and they were probably all wrong for me, but by some miracle, somehow I was accepted and I got into the MDT program. And,
wow.
And I'll forever be grateful, because obviously that was very important. But, I look back at all this stuff and I'm just like, wow, that was my journey. These are the productions, the experiences that kind of built line upon line my love, my fascination with acting, with singing, with performing, and it was a process, but I could not have done it. And strangely enough, it all happened in this small town where hardly anything like that happens. I don't know. I consider myself very fortunate that I had not only the opportunities I had that my parents provided for me, but especially because of my amazing music and drama teacher, Miss Jessica Jenkins. I'm so grateful she was there.
Yeah.
To introduce the arts to me, and so I'm a huge advocate for the arts and education, as you can.
Oh, totally. Totally. Well, and okay, I find this so interesting because what I know of your story is about when we talked at an event a few months ago, and you talked to me about how you were pre-med.
Yeah.
Tell me about that transition, and especially talk to me about being pre-med and being engaged.
Yeah. So this is a funny story. Well, I find it funny anyway.
I find it funny too.
So let me just preface this. So pre-mission BYU, I was I served a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. But prior to that, I took in a year there at BYU in the MDT program. And so, I was like, okay, no need to really commit to anything, but this is what I'm doing right now, MDT. And I knew it needed to be part of my life somehow. But post-mission, I return home and I'm kind of like, maybe I should look at something more stable.
Totally.
I had a mission president, a very wise, good man who was very concerned, but very business oriented. And he's like, maybe you ought to look at some other options. And I'm like, well, I did love science while I was at Green River High School. And that was my original dream, was actually to become a doctor. And so I was like, maybe I'll stay an MDT major, but I will just take the courses required for pre-med, and
like the complete opposite. Let's just try it.
Exactly. Well, that's the thing. And that this comes into play later. But it was during this time that I got a blind date with my soon-to-be wife, Rachel. We had a mutual friend, and she actually, it's funny because theater actually plays a part in our getting together, because once I got back off my mission, I auditioned for a production of Children of Eden that was going on there at BYU. I got the role of father, the God figure, and our mutual friend talked to Rachel about, it's a great show, you should go and see it. And so she came and saw it, and she knew that our mutual friend knew me. And so she went and saw it, and she asked this mutual friend to set us up on a blind date. And that's how it all started for us. So that's pretty amazing. But anyway, so thankfully I tricked her into marrying me, and probably because I told her I was pre-med and not going to be pursuing a musical theater career, that she thought to take a chance on me. But but anyway, so we get engaged, we get married, and soon after that, literally like right after our honeymoon, in fact, yes, right as soon as we get home from our honeymoon, I have like 3 messages from the Les Mis casting agency.
Oh my gosh.
And they're all like, "Hey, where are you? We were trying to get a hold of you, and we would really like to have you come in and audition. We have to immediate replacement," and so on and so forth. And I'm like, "Oh my gosh!" And Rachel's all like, "Okay, well," she wasn't expecting much. She thought we'd go to New York, do this audition, and so be it. And so anyway, so we went and did the audition, had a great time, came back. Nothing really came of it, but it did make me very conflicted about my career path, because that experience really woke the beast, we'll call it, because
here they were calling you.
Yeah. And so I was like, wow, maybe there is something to this. Maybe I could do this. And anyway, so this lion inside me, just like, I love this. I love what I'm doing. And I started thinking about, I am splitting my energies in my brain, and I can't handle it anymore. It was like I was really unstable. It's like, do I pursue, this part of my life where I love the science, the logic, the whatever, or do I pursue my art, my form? Either way, I have to focus on one, or I can't be good at either, and so it really caused me to think. And it was at that point that, being a religious person, I prayed a lot. And I had been praying about this particular question a long time. What career path do I need to take? But I finally got an answer. I finally feel like I knew what it was I needed to do, that I really needed to pursue performing as a career. Well, then I had to tell Rachel. And and I remember this. I remember going into our living room, and I was like, "Honey, I really think I need to pursue performing as a career. I think that's what I'm supposed to do, and I think that's would make me happy," and so on and so forth. And she's like, "Well, let me go pray about this too." And so she did. And then it doesn't really happen this way a lot. This is a miracle unto itself. But she came back and she said, "You're right. You're right. This is what we do." And it was a miracle. And it was interesting because that experience right there helped lay a foundation for our relationship. It was an experience that was really important for us as a couple. It not only in our commitment to this crazy career path that we're on, but it was also showed us the way that we need to approach the many, many decisions that we would eventually need to make over the years, as it relates to our career, balanced with our family relationships.
Totally.
We had to be of one heart, one mind on the matter for us to proceed. And it was from that point on that we were committed to this crazy life. And I think that says a lot about Rachel, obviously. I mean, I could go on all day about that, but she was willing to do that. And that was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
It was shortly after that Les Mis actually came into town, into Salt Lake. I received an appointment. I went in, and it just so happened that at that time there was an immediate position opening up on the tour, as there was a lot of movement going on in the various companies throughout the world, because they were getting ready to take Les Mis to China.
Oh, wow.
And so they were going to do a combination of the Broadway company, the West End company, and the tour. And it was the tour set that would be shipped over to China. And so anyway, there was a lot of movement, including within the company. And there was a position that opened up. And they literally, right after my audition, they asked me to leave the room for just a few minutes. I left. They came back out and they offered me a job. And it was so life-changing right in that moment. And they're like, and you need to be ready to go in like 2 weeks. So I was like, okay,
all right, let's go.
We're going to China. So make sure you get your passport ready to go. So anyway, it was a very thrilling time in our career, and it all happened just like that. But that's how I made my transition from pre-med to becoming a full-time actor, or at least trying to pursue that career.
That's amazing. And what parts were you cast in Les Mis?
So in Les Mis, when they first hired me, it was in the chorus role. I was one of the students. I was Fu Yi, among other things. And then I understudied the role of Enjolras, the student leader, the guy in the red and gold vest that leads the rebellion. And so I did that, and I understudied Enjolras. And right before we left for China, I played the role of Enjolras. So that was really cool.
Wow.
They brought in Combe Wilkinson, and so he was part of our company to play Valjean. And we were starting to get in the people from London and Broadway, including a person that I already had a connection with, who was a former BYU alum named Sandra Turley, who played Cosette. Anyway, it was wonderful. And then after China, and then we actually took the tour to South Korea as well for a few weeks. Then once we got home, and everybody went their ways back to Broadway or London, the position had opened up for Enjolras, and they offered it to me. And so I played the role of Enjolras from that point forward for several months.
Oh, how cool. And this may be a dumb question, but this was in English, correct?
Yes. No, that's not a dumb question at all. So yeah, it was it was a really fascinating experience, obviously.
Yeah.
Being in China, I'd never been to China or any of the Asian countries, actually, up to that point. And it was amazing because the production company really wanted to kind of prepare us for the fact that we were bringing in a revolutionary show in a country that still had Tiananmen Square,
Yeah.
mind. It was still part of the makeup of that country, whether people admitted it or not. And you have the red flag being waved and such, and I don't know what the government necessarily thought of it, but you could hear audible gasps in the audience, and they certainly loved the show. And it was really quite remarkable being part of that. But anyway, yes, we sang in English, and what they did was they had Chinese super titles and Korean super titles when we were there, and so
that's pretty cool.
Kind of an opera experience is really what
yeah. Okay, so I think it's pretty unique that Les Mis was in Salt Lake City auditioning. Was this a pretty extreme circumstance? I mean, this doesn't happen all the time.
Oh no, it was really fascinating, and to be honest, I'd love to talk to the person responsible was Ron LaRosa, and it was when he was casting. Gosh, I can't remember which company he was with at the time. I fail to remember. I know he then moved to Tara Rubin, and now he's at Disney. But anyway, wonderful man. But I think he marveled at the talent that he was seeing coming out of Utah. And I don't know who set this up or gave him the idea, but he decided that when Les Mis and both Les Mis and Phantom were in Salt Lake, he brought in the entire casting creative team and held auditions here. And I mean, cool. I remember that it was during my time at BYU. In fact, I think it was, yeah. And anyway, I remember that these two big casting calls for Les Mis and Phantom were in the newspaper, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I am going. But yeah, it's very unique. But they did it, and it was. I mean, every once in a while they'll go to the bigger cities, obviously like LA and Chicago. They'll hold open calls, there. And of course, in New York, it's fairly regular. But yeah, Salt Lake City, that was strange. And
so strange and so cool. Like, let's do that more often, guys. Come on.
Seriously, that was awesome. But that's how I got on file with them, with both shows. Yeah. And so yeah, it was quite an interesting experience. Now, that's how Les Mis happened. I've already shared that, but for Phantom, it was really kind of a long and interesting journey. Like I said, it started with Salt Lake City, and then
was this a separate audition then?
Yeah, it was. And so yeah, they were separate. So Les Mis had come, and then I think a few years later, Phantom came, but it was the same casting director.
And did you get your equity card from Les Mis?
I did. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So at this point, you're in Utah, you have your equity card, and Phantom comes through.
Oh, yes. Well, no, sorry. So this was prior to me actually joining Les Mis. So Les Mis had the initial audition in Salt Lake, and then I went to that. That's when, and then after that is when I got the call after my honeymoon to come out to New York. So my journey with Les Mis was kind of a little bit longer. So it started with the Salt Lake one. I got on file.
Totally.
They called me in to go do New York, and then they came back to Salt Lake again, and I went, and I received an appointment at that time, and that's when they hired me. So yeah, but my being on file with them all started with them coming to Salt Lake, and with Phantom, I did the Salt Lake one first, and I was not equity at that time. But then I became equity after Les Mis, and I noticed that they were auditioning in Chicago, and I decided to just take the plunge. I went out to Chicago and auditioned there as well. At that point that I started working with the music director for Phantom, Kristen Blodgett. She's kind of she's the representative of Cameron McIntosh's shows, kind of the music supervisor in the United States, and then in certain international companies. But lovely woman, I just loved working with her. And this becomes important because after that, I made the decision. Let's see. I think this was around 2005. So a long time ago. I received a call from them that they would like to hire me. But the trouble is that at that point, I was currently filming the Joseph Smith film for the Church of Jesus Christ, and I was getting ready to go and perform in a church pageant in Nauvoo, Illinois. 2005 was a big year. It was a kind of a commemorative year in the church, and so these big productions were being done, and I was involved in both the film and this big pageant that they were revising and doing in Nauvoo. And these church projects, they meant a great deal to me, personally and spiritually, and I was grateful to be part of them. And so when that call came, I knew I'd have to give some of this up, and I just agonized over the decision. And eventually, and I know a lot of people are going to be like, "You are absolutely crazy," and that's fine. You can feel that way for many of your listeners, but I finally decided I needed to turn it down.
Yeah.
And so I could perform in these church productions, and that's what I felt I needed to do. And so
I love it.
Now
you have to go with your gut.
Yeah, you do. You have to go with, that's one of the reasons I do theaters, because I love telling the stories that matter to me, that are important to me. And I want to make a difference in people's lives through the stories I tell. And I felt like these productions were really hit that mark. But anyway, so I made that decision. Obviously it didn't sit well with casting, as you might guess. And I thought, well, I guess I'm just blacklisted now and whatever. But fast forward now, 10 years, was it 10? No, couldn't have been. No, a couple of years later. Sorry. I'm getting my dates mixed up here.
It's hard, man. It's hard.
It's hard.
I can't remember years. I just remember like times of shows. I'm like, that's the year of Catch Me If You Can, That's all I remember.
That's exactly how I mark my life too. Yeah. Anyway, we decided to move to New York. It was like 2 years later, we moved to New York. And after we moved there, of course, I started attending the Fandom Equity Open calls and didn't know anything would happen. But I just kind of reintroduced myself to them again. But I had a job at New Amsterdam Theater where Mary Poppins was playing. I was an usher. And as I was going along, one day I noticed that Kristen Blodgett, the Phantom music director, was in the pit, and she was directing the show. And I was like, wow, I guess she does kind of moonlight around and does do a lot of Cameron Mackintosh stuff. So I thought, oh yeah. So anyway, one day when she was doing the show, I exited through the stage door, and I caught up with her, and she remembered me, thankfully, and we start talking about what I was doing there and such, and she's all like, and she got this kind of thoughtful look on her face, and she's like, send me your headshot and resume. And so I did it, and the next day I received an invitation to come audition for the show because they had an opening in the tour.
Wow.
And that's when I got it, and it was very exciting, and just had a fantastic experience with it. I found out later that the casting people had kind of said, well, he must not be interested in tours or something. I don't know how they got that, but they had just said he's not interested, probably not interested in touring. And that's what they got from me turning him down the first time. But they said when I started coming to the open calls, again, they started to think, I guess this kid's interested again or something. So that made a difference, according to Ron LaRosa. And so anyway, it was a fascinating experience, and I learned a lot from it. But anyway,
how cool! Where were you cast in Phantom? This was for the tour, and what roles did you play?
So I went in the chorus, and I played the marksman. I played the auctioneer sometimes, and anyway, a lot of various chorus roles. But I understudied the Phantom, and Raoul, and Andre, one of the company managers in the show. So I was kind of the understudy to the stars, is really what it was.
Yeah.
And I went on in those roles, several times, and just it was a blast. It was actually really fun to I was almost kind of a swing for the lead roles, is kind of, if you look at it, it's in a way, and it was just fun because all those three roles are just so different from each other, and it was a lot of fun as an actor to kind of dig into each one and figure out each character and their motivations and how I could present the material and sing it, and it was a lot of fun. It was really fun as an actor, a lot of challenge.
Totally. I mean, I can't think of more different roles. How cool.
Yeah, exactly. But also vocally, I mean, obviously it's a very challenging show, and it was a blast. So I love the challenge. It was a lot of fun.
How cool. So you get your equity card. At that point you're still kind of in Utah. We're rewinding just a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
My question is, having been back and forth between Utah and everything, the decision to keep your equity card and all of that, has any of that been tricky to navigate?
Yes, that's a good question. Yeah, when I got my equity card, I was actually forced to get into my equity card. I had only done one other show at an equity theater. It was Sundance, and so I started to build up points at that point. But right after Sundance is when I was cast in Les Mis, and when you're on a production contract, you have to join the union, and so I was kind of forced into being equity. However, if I was given the choice, would I have made a different choice at that time to join the union? I don't think so.
Yeah.
Of course, I don't think I really understood at that point how limiting it would be to be an equity member in Utah. It's just not a common thing. We don't have really a lot of equity theater going on, but thankfully there are a few theaters who have offered me guest artist contracts and such, and it's not as much as I'd like, but living here, I don't expect to be able to do it full time. And so,
sure.
But yeah, it's been tricky to navigate. Now, that's one of the reasons why we moved to New York, obviously, because it's much better out there. And thankfully being equity out there is a huge benefit, especially when you're auditioning. Oh my gosh.
Absolutely.
I mean, like during this last audition season that I was just at, I have a lot of non-ec friends who were there, and it was just a nightmare for them. Nightmare, and they would hardly ever get seen, and it's tough. It's really tough.
Yeah.
So I think if you're moving into the city, I think it is probably a good idea to have your card, but otherwise, unless you're in a major city in Utah, it's probably not worth it.
Yeah. It's such a tricky thing because you don't have a lot of opportunities in Utah to even get those points. But then when you do, and then you commit, and I don't know, it's just been such a hard thing to even navigate for me.
Yeah.
So How cool. So you recently, this last time going to New York, got an agent.
Yes.
This was new from your previous experiences. What did that process look like for you?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. It's interesting because prior to that, I had, when I lived in New York before the first time, when I got the Phantom Tour, I still didn't get an agent at that time. I was, I just did everything on my own. But I was interning at a talent agency because I wanted to kind of see what it was like, and so it was fun to kind of be in the back end of that and just kind of see what happens uh, with the within the agent client relationship, you know.
Sure.
And I think it was, and so I learned a lot, and it was a great agency, good people. So I knew what could happen, but it wasn't until last year, after my Tuacahn experience, I was at Tuacahn for the summer, and I made the decision that once Tuacahn was over, I was going to move back to New York and try to pursue my career more full time out there. And so I decided, you know what, I really want to get a theatrical agent. I think that would be extremely important and very helpful. And so what I did was I started to think about what I needed to do to get it done, and I was just like, you know, I just have to do a cold submission, and so I felt it would be I decided to look up every talent agency I could. I tried to find the ones that I felt would be good for me, and I just submitted online or via mail. Just, hey, this is me, and I had a little cover letter, my resume. So you obviously know, and I knew working there before that those never work. Hardly ever does it actually get in front of an agent, and even fewer are actually called in. But I had a good response, and I was grateful for that. And I think my timing had a lot to do with it, because first of all, I was currently employed at a respectable regional theater and playing some lead roles, and so that obviously stood out. Second, I started submitting to them in October, which was before the madness of the whole audition showcase season in New York. And then also, I had just built and posted a brand new website that had a lot of performance videos on it, photos, my bio, so on. So I could direct them to that. And then I also had some decent credits on my resume already at that point, and so I think that helped. And then also, I've been thinking about this. I've also entered a new phase of my career. I'm now the middle-aged man, the dad, which is different than the young leading man that I was before. And so I think in a way there's kind of probably less demand, more demand and maybe less supply for those types, because by that point, I think a lot of people in New York have usually moved on from their post-college youth stints in New York City. But I don't know. But it was interesting because when I talked to them, a lot of them said that the thing that clinched it for them was watching my performance video of singing "Bring Him Home" at President Thomas S. Monsel's birthday celebration a few years ago.
Oh, how awesome!
Isn't that cool? Yeah. So I was like, oh, well, great. I'm glad that you liked it. It was just kind of affirming. It was very nice, but that's what hooked them.
Totally.
So I ended up signing with Todd Eskin at ATB Talent, and it's based in LA, but they do have a New York office. And anyway, I've been happy with them. It's been fun. It's been a short. I've had a short relationship with them so far.
Yes, a short testing period.
But I've been happy.
Yeah. What would you say is the biggest lesson that you've learned from theater in general? And also just let's just leave it at theater in general for right now.
Okay. Well, to me, these kind of are blended together, because I'm gonna talk a little bit. I mean, there's obviously a kind of life lessons, that I could talk about, but the lesson I focused on had more to do with the profession itself. This past audition season, it's been a while, like almost 9 years since I was in New York. And this past audition season, before it was dismantled by COVID-19, I realized how important it is to be confident with no thought of self-judgment when you enter the room. I mean, it is so freeing if you can walk in without worrying about how you're going to sound or perform or be perceived by the casting director or artistic team, and are just actually looking forward to giving them everything you've got in the moment. And when you have that mindset, you can put all your energy and focus on really communicating what you're singing, what you're saying during your performance. Remembering your partner in the scene, your objectives, tactics, and whatever acting methodology you want to subscribe to. But so it becomes more than just your pretty voice singing, and that's an issue I've had in the past, actually, is just focusing so much on my voice. So it just feels good to be totally content with your performance, with whatever you do, and not give it a second thought. And this kind of really applies to theater as well, because there's a story I love about a church leader and who went and presented before a congregation in the East and thought they had just done this horrible job, didn't touch a soul. And then years later, the same leader goes to the West and does a similar conference setting and presents. And he says afterwards, there's a person that came up to him who said, "Hey, do you remember this conference that you presided at and spoke at in the East so many years ago?" And he's like, "Yeah, I remember that." He's like, "I want to thank you for that. I want to thank you because it changed my life. It helped me to be better. I have a better relationship with my family. I'm now serving more. I'm happier," so on and on and on. And it's interesting because this church leader said at that point, as he left, he was like, he just shook his head and he just says, "You never know. You never know how much good you do. You never know."
Yeah.
And I love that from a performer's perspective, because we get up there, we go into an audition room, or even we just get up and we perform. And so often we are so critical of ourselves, and we're thinking, "Oh man, I did that. I flubbed up that note. I was not connected here. I could have done this better. I messed up that dance move." We're constantly critical, and we're thinking the audience hated it. They saw everything. They know what I've done. They the gig is up. I'm awful. I'll never be hired again, so on and so forth. But it's funny because when I was on the Phantom tour, I remembered this. There was a time when I went on as Phantom and I just flubbed it up. I mean, I stumbled over some lyrics. I was not strong in some of my higher notes, and I was really, really disappointed, really down.
Yeah.
But it was so interesting because the audience members, not knowing this, I came outside the stage door and I've probably received more compliments, more self-affirming praise than I had ever had in my life. And I was like, wow, it's true. You never know. You never know how much good you do, and you never know how well you really did. And so why worry about it? If we get up there, we do our best, we give our gift, we give everything that we have, and just focus on that performance, and then just let it go.
Yeah.
And it's a similar lesson in life, I think. But that's really what theater's taught me.
Totally. I mean, I've had kind of a hard lesson in sometimes, you'll have these performances and you've been doing them for forever, and you'll be like, "Oh, but that one I wish that my family had seen the one on Thursday," or "I wish that," and you forget that you have to trust all the work that you've done before to get to that point. And then all of that is your foundation sitting there so good, so ready, that even if your voice isn't as warm as you want it to be, or whatever it may be, that all of that foundation was good and that it worked.
Amen. Yeah, I think that's really important for actors to remember. There's a great acting book by Bre and Dallyn called "The Actor and the Target," and he mentions this, and I love that. What he calls it, the invisible work. It's like you put in your homework, you practice, you rehearse, you perform. You're always learning and always developing, and you have to trust that that's still there. That the performances and the bad performances are all still there. They're part of you. So you can let them go. You don't have to concentrate on them. You don't have to be thinking, "Oh, what did I do on Thursday? And I want to replicate that now today." You know what I mean?
Totally.
I can just be in the moment. I can give what I give that day, and I can be content with it. It doesn't mean that it's perfect by any means, but it does mean that you stop judging yourself, stop worrying, stop fearing, and let it go, and just focus outward and give what you got that day, and it will be perfect for whatever it is that day. And and so trust in that invisible work. Just believe that it's there, so you don't have to focus on it in order to create your role that day. You know what I mean? In order to make something beautiful happen on stage, it will come. It will happen. Yeah. It's there. You just got to trust it.
Oh, I love that use of invisible work. That's such a great term for it. I love it. Okay, I want to know. So you are a family man. How many kids do you have?
I have 5 children.
5 kids and a sweet Rachel wife. We're so grateful for her.
Yeah. We actually had children from the get-go. Even though we knew that we were going to go into this career full time, we still started a family right away. And in fact, when I got the Les Mis tour, which was literally only a year and a half after we were married, and Rachel got pregnant during that time, we had a newborn when we started the Les Mis tour. So she was literally only 4 months old. 4 months old at that time. So we grabbed a minivan. We bought a minivan. We threw all of our belongings in it and threw a baby in the back, and we took off. And it was really amazing.
That's amazing. So she was able to come with you on this tour.
Yeah.
Did she come with you often?
On Les Mis, yes. We were together the entire time. So it was cool. 3 of us. We toured around the country. She wasn't able to come with me out to China or Korea for obvious reasons, because we had a newborn. Yeah. That would have been challenging. But she did come out for a week in China. So we were able to figure out a way for the baby to kind of survive okay without her for a week. And so she came out and joined me there to experience that, and then she left. And then I didn't see him again for, goodness, like a couple months. Yeah. This broke my heart. I remember we flew into Minneapolis, and I came down the ramp from the plane, and my wife was there, and this child who had grown, 2 months, in that time period. I mean, God, she would have been, she grew a lot, and she didn't recognize me, and
no.
And this is like my baby, my child, and it just killed me.
She's like, who are you?
Oh, I'm so sorry. But it was kind of hard, and it's interesting because I remember a kind of a similar experience that kind of woke me up a little bit. I was in fact, it was while I was on tour with Phantom. My wife was pregnant, and I took some leave to go, and so I could be there, some parental leave. And anyway, she was due. Okay, I had a job here in Utah because we were living in New York at the time, to come and sing at a women's conference here at BYU, and it was about a week or so from her due date. And so I was like, oh, do we want to do this or not? And she's like, just go do it. I feel like you should do it. And just a precaution, my mom came out there to be with her and help her. And so I came out here, and wouldn't you know, as soon as I land, no, she calls me, and she tells me my water just broke.
Oh my God.
Going to the hospital. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And so I am like rushing back to the airport. I'm calling Delta to see if I can't figure out a way to get back. And, it was a late night flight. And so I was like, maybe I could take a red eye. And I'm just like, and the more I thought about it, it's like, she's going to give birth while I'm in the air. There's no question. And so we just thought, you know what, I'd like to at least be on the phone with you. I want to be with you somehow, to be able to, while you're giving birth to our son. And anyway, so she says, just stay there. It's okay. And just come back when you're scheduled to come back. And so I did. And I was on the phone, and my mom was, telling me everything that was going on. And, but the OBGYN was a very kind man. He took a picture and sent it to me on my cell phone. And that was the first time I had seen my son. And it was heartbreaking. And then, and then I'm asked to go in front of this big group of women. And I felt like I needed to share that story. And I thought, oh my gosh, because Rachel had said, she's like, oh, well, at least you'll have a really good story to share.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm like, yeah, they'll drive me out. They'll run me on a rail. It's like, what are you doing here? Get out of here. But I showed it to them. And anyway, it was amazing how many people remembered that. And so I showed them the picture. It was on a big screen, and so I just had the camera zoom in on the picture of my son. But it was a neat experience, but it still was very heartbreaking. This life, this career is not conducive to families. I mean, a lot of people know that. But I tell you, would never think to pursue it without them. Having a family, a wife, kids, these are the people that help keep you grounded.
Yeah.
They help to keep your priorities straight and to not be blinded by the stars that you're chasing, and having a family to come home to, like after a performance, is such a blessing.
Yeah.
Theater is, by nature, I think this career is extremely selfish. It's all consuming. And that can have a lot of negative effects on you as a person, I think. You have to really put your heart and soul into succeeding in this career. So I feel it's very easy to kind of lose yourself in all that and forget about what's most important in life. Our life together we've had a lot of twists and turns, but and we've tried to be flexible and to do the right thing. And some decisions are made for the benefit of our family, and others have been for the benefit of my career. There's been a lot of sacrifices that have been involved over the years, and I can't tell you how many times I've had to jump ship and kill my career. I really have, because our family needed it at that time. We needed to do something different. We've been apart for long periods of time. Like I was saying, with like the tour of Phantom, she didn't come with me. She was home because we had 3 kids at the time, and it just wouldn't have worked out like it did with Les Mis when we only had one little one. And so there's a lot of sacrifice involved, and we just try to support each other, help each other, and our children with whatever we decide to do. I love this. Rachel said to me once, she's like, you know what? Our life is a lot like that movie, Joe versus the Volcano.
Oh my gosh. And I love that movie.
I love that movie too. It's such a quirky movie, but there's such beautiful lessons and realities that are taught through it. But the one that she loves about us is when Meg Ryan and Tom Hanks are up there and they're about ready to jump into the volcano. She turns to him and she just says, Joe, nobody knows anything. We'll take this leap and we'll see. We'll jump and we'll see. That's life. And Rachel thinks of our life a lot like that, where a lot of times we're asked to jump into the volcano where we really don't know what's going to happen. And as it turns out for them, obviously they get blown out of the volcano and survive. And thank goodness they do, because, the whole island explodes, right? And had they not jumped into the volcano, they would have died, which, right? But I love that, and you together, you make these decisions and you just jump and you just see. And life has a wonderful way of working out, especially when you're committed to each other. And, and that's made all the difference in the world. I have a pretty amazing marriage partner who's been willing to commit to this for the long haul. And I could never have done what I've done in my career and had the career I've had without her unfailing support and faith. Times are going to be tough, I guess, no matter what you're doing, but especially in this career, tough financially, emotionally, psychologically. And it's during those times that you need to communicate with, love, and support each other the most. And
totally. So in an imaginary world, let's just pretend like if COVID was over tomorrow, what would be your dream project? What would you be doing if you could make anything up?
Oh, wow, you went there. That is really hard to say. Honestly, my dream, what I want is changing almost day to day. And I know that seems kind of strange, but I'm slowly starting to realize the things that are most important to me, and the things that my children need, are becoming the things that I need. And I want to adjust my life in a way that will be able to be of greatest benefit both to them and to me. And that to me is my ideal world.
Yeah.
So for instance, I was out in New York during audition season for most of like December and November, actually, all the way through up till March, and when this thing started to really hit. And while I was there, I was away from my family again, and 'cause I was staying with some friends, and I started to realize how much my presence is important in my home. And so once again, we didn't really have a plan moving out there what was going to happen, beyond just, well, we'll just see if I get a job there. The goal was to get out there, make it onto Broadway, and be able to have a stable home life of sorts, doing.
Yeah.
And obviously that has been put on hold. But while I was there, I started to realize how much my family needed the wonderful environment and circumstance that we have here in Utah. They love their schools, they love their friends, and my children have needs, and they have some challenges, and they have a good support system here. And so I had to really think, would I be willing to give that up?
Yeah.
If my family, if it was important, and we have a home here too. We have a wonderful situation that we haven't really had before, because we've always been in and out of apartments, and moving all over the place depending on where I was working. And I don't know, I think we're at a point, because my daughter is about to go to college too, and it's like, I want to be here, and I want her to feel like she has a home. And anyway, this is just kind of a long and rambling way of saying I don't know the answer to that question. It's changing all the time, and we're continuing reevaluating what it is that's important for us to do. I just want to be able to provide for my family. Of course, I want to do what makes me happy, which is still be involved in my performing and do things that are in the performing arts. But I want to make sure I'm doing the best thing for my family and my wife, and for me. And I absolutely believe that I believe in God. I believe that He knows us. I believe that He is aware of our circumstances and who we are, and also what brings us the greatest joy. And I believe that He's trying to teach us where it is that we need to go that will bring us the greatest happiness. And I've got to be open to that. I had an experience that meant a lot to me while I was doing the Nauvoo pageant. So speaking of the Nauvoo pageant, that production that made me decline doing Phantom of the Opera.
Yeah.
One of the years that I was doing the Nauvoo pageant, one of the leaders of my church came out to see it, and a man that I just adore. And he told me about his daughter, and how she's a brilliant musician and had a really wonderful and rising career as a musician, and with an orchestra. And she had made the decision to give that up because she saw how it was affecting her family, and that her family needed her at home. And must have been a really tough decision, because I know this musician, and they're extraordinary, and could do a lot, but they were willing to give that up. And then he told me this. He said, "Right now, your life feels like it's a speedboat out on the water. And it's loud, it's noisy, but it's also exciting, it's exhilarating. And that's the way life feels right now." But he says, "But beware, because one day there'll be a voice that calls you from the shore. And this voice will not be loud. It'll be a still, small voice, a quiet voice that will be calling you to shore to go another way. And you're going to have to be open to hearing that voice, because it's not going to grab your attention. But if you're looking for it, and if you're open to it, then and you follow its promptings, then you will find greater joy and happiness, and fulfillment in ways that you never could have thought. And I loved that bit of advice, and it's been something that both my wife and I have tried to um, tried to live by in our life. We want to make sure that yes, we have goals and we have things that we want, but as we go along, we're always kind of tuning into that voice, so to speak, and trying to make sure that we are following what we believe God wants us to do. And we know that if we do that, that it will bring about our greatest happiness as well as the best circumstance for our family, because He knows our hearts and He knows what we desire, but He also knows what's best. And I trust in that. I really do, and both my wife and I have, and so we want to make sure that we're trying to do that. And so, anyway, that's a long way of saying we kind of try to take each day as it comes, and we're going to see what happens. I may go back out to New York. I may find something else here in Utah that will be able to keep me employed and also keep me happy and hopefully be able to continue to employ the talents that I love to use and share for my career. I just honestly don't know, but to me, that would be my dream. My goal is to do that, to make sure that I'm meeting that criteria, that I'm doing what I should be doing in the place I'm supposed to be doing it in, and and then the rest will just kind of take care of itself, I think.
Totally. And there really are so many great opportunities here in Utah, if you look for them and if you're creative enough to make them work. Correct me if I'm wrong, you're also working with COPA, is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. So thankfully, since coming here, I have a good friend who is one of the founders of COPA, and who I've performed with several times. And anyway, she invited me to come on, and I'm helping them to develop an online curriculum for the performing arts. And we're kind of building a website. We're going in and recording lectures about various aspects of performing, and anyway, it's been very exciting. It's been very fun, and I love working with them. They're a great group, COPA, and a fantastic performing arts school here in Utah. So that's good. I'm also got. I have a friend who's currently developing some new Sunday programming for BYU TV, and so I'm involved just a little bit with that on one of the episodes. So I'm looking forward to that. And then, like I was mentioning with South Pacific, that right now anyway should be starting up in September and will run through December. But I just have no idea. Everything is just so up in the air. My concert career is basically, is non-existent now. Had several things cancel on me, and so it's a weird time for a lot of people.
It really is. And we just adapt,
Yeah. You have to adapt. And we have to become comfortable with change, because the only thing constant really is change. In fact, I remember, speaking of my mission in Australia, we had a change of mission presidents. And a member of the 12 apostles, one of the leaders of the church, came out there and gave a really great talk to us missionaries. And his talk was mostly about change and how important it is that we learn to deal with change and to respond well to it. And he says, that'll be one of the greatest skills you can develop in your life, is learning to be able to adapt and go with change and not be filled with regret, not be filled with a longing for the way things were, but be able to adapt and be able to move forward, and that's something that I think as artists in particular, especially during these times, we've got to learn and be good with. And so, it's a very important thing. And what's cool, and we've talked about this before, Bre, is that sometimes we pigeonhole ourselves, right? We say, we look down the road here and we think, I can only be happy, I can only be fulfilled if I reach that goal, or if I pursue this particular path. But I think we're selling ourselves short, and we don't usually have an open mind enough to consider that there are so many other things, so many other talents we could develop. There's so many other roads that we could take that could bring a great joy, and that we could make a great contribution to. I think about you and your husband. You both of you just have. I greatly admire you for this. Um, you do headshots. You're running this podcast. I know your husband does art. In addition to just being incredible performers, and I love that about you two, and I love that you are able to take those kind of risks and be creative and pursue those opportunities. I don't.
Oh, thank you so much, Dallyn.
You're welcome. You're incredibly talented in all the above, which is really remarkable, both of you. But for me, I've only ever really felt like performing was it. That's all I ever knew. That's all I ever wanted. And so my ability to expand beyond the performing arts has been really limited. I mean, I have done a concert career. I've done recordings of I have like how many now? I'm still trying to figure it out. 4 albums out. I have 4 albums, including one duo album, Christmas album, and I do a bit of film. I do some commercial, but I've never quite gotten out of that idea of performing, and to my detriment, I think. But because I feel like that's all I'm good at, and that's all I have ever wanted to do. Now I take that back. I gotta backtrack on that, because I have done a lot of teaching. Like I taught at BYU for quite a while, and I've also and at private studios. I've taught voice, I've taught acting, I've done master classes, and so I guess that is an aspect that I have pursued. But it's still in the performing arts, but yeah, and I've also
totally.
But and I love that. I just love the kids. I love the people that I'm able to work with, and both in the college and high school level, and I love those kids, and I love their passion. I love what they do, but I just have never really felt the same passion with teaching as I have with performing, and the same fulfillment, and so I'm still finding my own way, and I don't know if I'll ever stop, to be honest. And I don't know. It's interesting.
That's our job, as human beings, is to keep open to those opportunities and to those callings, and know that there is a season for every aspect of our lives. That if you sit there and go, oh, I'm going to move to New York, that's so great. And if you feel called and you go, that's awesome. And there may be some day when you go, oh, this doesn't feel right, and you have to remain open to what is next and what is new and what is going to help you grow and really be fulfilled.
And you know what? And even if it seems totally counterintuitive to what you had thought you should do or need to do. I mean, look at me, for example. I'm not saying that I'm the model, but my career path, I mean, I've killed it. And I think I mentioned this. I've killed it like several times, because it was best for our family. But I've always found that even though I did that and moved on to something else that I thought would be better for our family at that point, it always led to such amazing blessings. There were such wonderful things that came into my life because I followed that. And I never would, everything in my mind said, don't do it. You're crazy. You've got a good thing going here. You need to ride this wave. But I knew something needed to change. Something needed to happen. And thankfully, I felt like I received some direction and prompting to go a different direction, and it seemed like it was heading me in the opposite way of where I thought I wanted to go.
Right.
But there were great things, and so I think, like you were saying, we have to be open to those things and don't just discard them. We have to really consider the whole picture, and not just be so fixated on one thing, like New York, for example, and things there, and say that that's the end all for my life and my career.
Yeah. Don't assume you're the smartest person.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. We're gonna wrap this up. I just want to know, how can we get more of you? Do you have a website? How can we follow you?
Yes, I do have a website. It's at www.dvbayles.com. And so that is D as in Dallyn, V as in Vale, which is my name. Yes. And then Bayles, my last name, which is spelled BAYLES.com. So dvbayles.com. I have a lot of performance videos, my bio, a resume, as well as I try to keep an event calendar up, and I try to keep it up to date. I've been doing pretty good with it, but right now there's like nothing, obviously, so right. I mean, it's a little barren. But anyway, you can go there for that. I also have a Facebook fan page. Just look up official Dallyn Bayles fan page. You can follow. I pretty frequently will send messages on that as to what I am doing, and then I do have an Instagram account, but I've never posted anything yet, and I feel
perfect.
I know, but my tag is pound Dallyn Bayles, my full name, and then I also have a YouTube channel. I have a few performances listed on there, but most everything I have is up on my website, so that's probably the best place to go. But anyway, so yeah, if you'd like to follow along, I'd love it, and yeah.
Oh, I'm so excited. I'm going to follow along. I didn't know you had a YouTube channel. I'm going to stalk you.
Yeah, well, I just post something every year or so. I'm probably going to be, I just did a concert up here at the U of U over Christmas with a Broadway friend of mine, and we filmed it, and I'm going to be posting a few of the songs that we did there. So it turned out pretty well.
See, that'll be up to date.
Yeah,
it's perfect.
I'll add a few things in there, and so yeah.
Oh, that's so great, Dallyn. You're so delightful as a human being and so empowering as a performer. Thank you so much for talking to me.
You're very welcome. Love you, Bre, and thank you so much.
Love you too.
Yes, it's a wonderful opportunity to be able to share things that are meaningful to me, and thank you for finding that and sharing it with the world.
Of course.
You've been listening to the Pepper Fox Podcast. Love what you heard today? Go ahead, share it with your friends, and leave us a review. Get more actor tips and resources by visiting pepperfoxphoto.com, and check us out on Instagram at pepperfoxphoto.